Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kankana Hazarika, and I am a research intern at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. On behalf of the Institute of Chinese Studies, I extend a warm welcome to all to today's ICS Wednesday seminar titled From Me to Post-Censorship Feminism, New Trajectories of Feminist Activism in China. Today's talk will analyze how feminist activism in China had evolved and adapted beyond conventional forms of protest under increasing state censorship and digital surveillance. Between 2018 and 2020, discussions on gender equality and women's rights in China have gained unprecedented public attention, particularly with the emergence of the Me Too movement. At the same time, this conversation have unfolded within an increasingly restrictive digital environment, marked by tighter censorship and state surveillance narrowing the space for visible feminist mobilization. This has raised important questions about how feminist voices continue to survive, evolve, and find new avenues of expression despite shrinking public space. Drawing on Jacques Rancière's distinction between politics and policing, as well as Judith Butler's insight on the productive nature of censorship, the speaker examines how feminist resistance has migrated into everyday life, affective communities, alternative digital platforms, and coded forms of communication. The speaker for today's seminar is Ms. Vidisha Seth. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Chinese Language and Culture at Vishwa Bharati University. She holds a master's and bachelor's degree in Chinese language and literature from Vishwa Bharati University and pursued advanced Chinese language, trained as a general scholar at Beijing Language and Culture University, China. Her academic work focuses on Chinese language and literature, gender studies, feminist activism in China, comparative political and cultural studies, cross-strait relations, and contemporary Chinese society. Her publications include articles titled From Leftover to Liberated, The Quiet Feminist Revolution in Urban China, and Feminism in Restricted Landscape, Rise and Impact of Pink Feminism in China. Sharing today's seminar is Professor Shabri Mitra, Professor of Chinese Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University and Honorary Fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies. Professor Mitra is widely recognized for her scholarship on the fields of contemporary Chinese literature and criticism, Chinese cultural history, gender issue, Indian China cultural literature and criticism, Chinese cultural history, and regional interaction. Her latest publication is an edited volume titled China's May 4th Movement, New Narratives and Perspectives, published by Routledge in 2023. And her co-edited volume titled China's Society and Culture Studies and Reflections is forthcoming from Routledge in 2026. She is also the editor of ICS Quarterly Journal, China Report, published by Sage. Before I hand over to the chair, I would like to request all participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall remain muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may use the raise hand options during the interactive session. You will then be invited to unmute yourself and ask your question. I now hand over to the chair. Over to you, Professor Sabri Mitra. Thank you.
Thanks, Konkona, for your very generous introduction and for this opportunity to actually chair a scholar like Vidisha. I've known Vidisha for some years now, maybe not a decade, but I've seen her grow from the undergraduate to the postgraduate to her year in China. And of course, later now, as she's actually concentrating on working on women's issues and what she calls as feminist activism. Before we begin, I just want to have a little backgrounder, historical backgrounder to this whole question of women's movement in China so that we have the perspective ready for us as we are listening to Vidisha. So going back, we know the Communist Party of China had taken a certain position about liberation of women, bringing them into the workforce. And Mao Zedong himself had talked in terms of women hold up half the sky. And from there, we also have seen, the writer Ting Ling, who in her famous short piece in, I think, 1942, during the Yan'an period, talks about the double burden come dilemma of women and how they're expected to overcome both all at the same time. And then we know what the trajectory has been through Mao's period. And then in the post-reform China, one of the pioneers is Li Xiaojiang, who talks in terms of a women's movement, which will be driven by a kind of women's activism that has to blend socialism and feminism together with Chinese characteristics, and sometimes it's been called as socialist feminism. So from there, we see a different kind of way forward from 2018 onwards. That's the period that Vidisha is going to talk about. So with that backgrounder, I would now request Vidisha to start her presentation. You have 30 to 35 minutes, and then we will move on to the question and answers. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, Professor Rancière, for this opportunity and giving such a beautiful, brief introduction for the paper, so that it makes it a bit more like it gives a perspective towards the paper. So thank you so much, ma'am, for the introduction. And with that, I would like to start the presentation. Can I get the PowerPoint PPT? So the paper is titled as From Me Too to Post-Censorship Feminism, the New Trajectories of Feminist Activism in China. In the global landscape of contemporary social movements, digital feminist activism in the People's Republic of China offers a striking example of resilience, adaptation, and transformation. Over the last decade, China's civic space has narrowed significantly, shifting from a period that allowed limited online and offline advocacy to a highly scrutinized environment shaped by the doctrine of comprehensive national security. A major turning point came in 2015 with the detention of the feminist five just before International Women's Day. The five activists were held for 37 days for planning to distribute anti-sexual harassment materials on public transportation. Their arrest sent a clear message that the state would no longer tolerate organized grassroots activism. As political restrictions intensified, feminist groups found their room for action increasingly constrained, leading activism to move away from the streets and into digital spaces and online. The arrival of the global Me Too movement in China in early 2018 marked a turning point in the history of the digital feminist activism. Through a combination of real-name testimonies, legal action, and viral hashtag campaigns, Chinese feminists succeeded in bringing issues such as sexual harassment, workplace inequality, and bodily autonomy into mainstream public debate. Yet this moment of heightened visibility was met with an equally strong response from the party state and platform regulators. Using a sophisticated system of account bombing that is known as Chahao in Chinese, algorithmic censorship, and regulatory labels such as inciting gender antagonism, authorities gradually dismantled the digital infrastructure that had supported organized public feminism. This increasingly restrictive environment raises an important question, that is, has Chinese feminism weakened under authoritarian censorship, or has it evolved into a fundamentally new form of activism? So this paper argues that Chinese feminism did not disappear or enter a phase of irreversible decline following the state repression. Instead, it reorganized itself into decentralized, highly adaptive, and digitally mediated forms, which are conceptualized here as post-censorship feminism. rather than depending on centralized organizations, visible public demonstrations, or large-scale mobilization campaigns, which have become politically risky and largely unfeasible. Contemporary Chinese feminism increasingly functions through dispersed digital networks, affective communities, everyday acts of negotiation, and subtle forms of non-cooperative communication. Next slide, please. Yeah. To understand this transformation, this paper draws on Jacques Rancière's political philosophy, particularly his distinction between politics and police. The police does not simply refer to law enforcement, rather it denotes the established social order that determines what can be seen, said, and recognized within the public sphere. And politics, in contrast, emerges when those excluded from this order challenge its boundary, assert their equality, and reshape what can be seen and heard. In the Chinese context, the state platform nexus functions as a powerful policing mechanism that seeks to depoliticize feminist critique by shifting it from the realm of public structural contestation to the private sphere of individual and emotional negotiation. Yet, as Judith Butler argues in her work on censorship, power is also productive in nature. Censorship does not simply suppress speech, it creates the conditions, language, and coded forms through which expressions becomes possible. Post-censorship feminism reflects this capability of productive survival. By navigating the boundaries between visibility and invisibility, employing sophisticated linguistic and technological strategies of wall dancing, and embracing alternative lifestyles as forms of quiet resistance, Chinese feminists continue to challenge patriarchal structures from the margins of both digital and physical spaces of power. Next slide, please. So the next comes the Me Too movement and the peak of public feminist activism. The public phase of China's Me Too movement began on January 2018 when Luo Qianqian, also known as Luo Xixi, a Silicon Valley-based academic and Peihang University alumna, published a detailed real name accusation on Weibo against her former PhD supervisor. She alleged that he had engaged in repeated sexual harassment and attempted rape. Luo's post received more than 4 million views within a day and recounted an experience that left her struggling with severe depression and hallucinations. Luo's action was not individual effort. Together with 5 other survivors, she created a private WeChat group. Working closely with feminist journalist Huang Shuiqin and lawyer Wan, the group collected testimonies and supporting evidence. This strategic blend of digital documentation and public pressure resulted in a rare institutional success. Peihang University revoked Chen's teaching credentials, and the Ministry of Education later issued its first departmental guidelines aimed at preventing sexual harassment in higher education. Next slide, please. Luo's breakthrough sparked a wave of student-led activism across some of China's most prestigious universities. In April 2018, USC, a student at Peking University, joined 7 classmates in submitting a formal petition demanding information about the university's handling of a 1998 case involving Gao Yan, a student who died by suicide after allegedly being raped by a literature professor. The university responded quickly and forcefully. Administrators reportedly summoned UA to late night meetings, pressured and intimidated her, threatened her graduation prospects, and compelled her mother to search through and delete files from her personal device. In response to this administrative pressure, UA published a strongly worded open letter on visa. Although the post was quickly removed by automated censors, digital activists devised an innovative strategy to circumvent online restrictions. They preserved the text of UA's letter on the public Ethereum blockchain. By embedding the letter as a metadata within a cryptocurrency transaction, activists made the document permanent, tamper-resistant, and accessible through UTF-8 character conversion. This episode highlighted the creativity and adaptability of techno-feminist resistance in China's tightly controlled digital environment. As online platforms intensified censorship of the term Me Too, grassroots internet users responded with creative linguistic tactics. One of the most notable was the adoption of the homophone rice bunny, pronounced as Me Too in Mandarin, often represented through emoji combinations of a rice bowl and a rabbit. This clever wordplay acted as a digital Trojan horse. It enabled discussions of sexual harassment and gender-based violence to spread widely before censors identified and blocked the post. Next slide, please. The highest point and ultimately the legal boundary of this public case was reflected in the landmark lawsuit of sexual assault brought by Zhou Xiaoxun, better known by her pseudonym Tianzi, against prominent China Central Television host Tu Chu. Confronted with a counter lawsuit from Chu and intense censorship, she pursued a civil case on the grounds of damage to personality rights. The case continued for 4 years and reached a historic moment in December 2020, when hundreds of young feminists gathered outside the Beijing #1 Intermediate People's Court, carrying placards, chanting slogans, and enduring freezing winter conditions. They transformed what began as individual legal dispute into a powerful display of collective solidarity. The gathering highlighted the remarkable capacity of digital feminism to inspire public mobilization and sustained activism. However, the legal system ultimately reasserted the limits of state power. In August 2022, the court dismissed Tianzi's final appeal, citing insufficient evidence. For many activists, the verdict reinforced a growing belief that the state-controlled judiciary was structurally reluctant to recognize allegations of sexual misconduct against influential state-connected individuals. As a result, the legal process itself came to be viewed as a form of institutional violence, effectively closing off one of the few remaining avenues for formal and publicly visible justice. Next slide, please. The systemic repression of public feminism in China reached a critical turning point on March 8, 2018, International Women's Day, when platform regulators permanently shut down the Weibo and WeChat accounts of feminist voices, that is the Mutuan Trishan. Founded in 2009 by veteran activist Liu Ping, Feminist Voices had become the country's most influential feminist media brand, attracting more than 180,000 followers and serving as a key hub for feminist advocacy and mobilization. Shortly before its closure, the platform had launched a campaign encouraging users to share photographs under the hashtag March 8 Against Harassment, drawing attention to the widespread problem of sexual harassment. According to Liu Ping, the forced closure of the platform was a direct response to its ability to organize and mobilize people. By dismantling this central organizing hub, regulators aimed to weaken the leadership and coordination of the digital feminist movement. Following the shutdown, the state platform Nexus increasingly relied on a harsh censorship practice, commonly known as account bombing. Unlike many Western forms of deplatforming, which generally involve explicit rule violations and some degree of transparency or appeal, the account bombing or the Chaha operates through an opaque and often irreversible process. Accounts can be permanently suspended without prior notice, clear justification, or meaningful opportunity for appeal, effectively functioning as a form of digital erasure. Under this system, users are effectively deprived of all communicative functions, including the ability to post, comment, chat, or send direct messages. Their public profiles are often replaced with notices stating that the content does not exist or that the content has been suspended for violating relevant laws and regulations. Beyond restricting expression, this mechanism produces a form of social and historical erasure. Banned users lose years of archived content, social connections, and digital communities, disrupting the transmission of knowledge, experiences, and collective memory from one generation of online activists to the next. This process of structural erasure is reinforced by the state's strategic framing of feminist discourse as a potential threat to social and political stability. In the early 2020s, the term gender antagonism emerged not as a neutral sociological concept, but as a formal category within platform governance and online regulation. Supported by guidelines from the Cyberspace Administration of China and public statements from the Ministry of State Security, inciting gender antagonism gradually became institutionalized as a punishable online offense. In 2021, platforms such as Weibo incorporated inciting gender antagonism into their user reporting system. Under this policy, the platform reported sanctioning more than 15,000 accounts and removing roughly 640,000 posts during a single enforcement campaign. Discussions of structural patriarchy, domestic violence, or legal reforms affecting marriage have frequently been categorized as examples of gender antagonism and removed from public view. At the same time, critics have noted that openly misogynistic or sexist content often remains comparatively less restricted on these platforms. Next slide, please. This shift in state governance is closely linked to China's ongoing demographic challenges. Is the next slide visible? Yeah. This shift in state governance is closely linked to China's ongoing demographic challenges. The long-term consequences of the one-child policy, combined with the widespread practice of sex-selective abortion, have produced a significant gender imbalance. Estimates suggest that by 2027, China could have a surplus of approximately 22.5 million marriage-age men, amounting to roughly 119 men for every 100 women. At the same time, Chinese women have become increasingly educated and economically independent, accounting for 51% of higher education enrollments by 2024. Many young women are also becoming less willing to conform to traditional expectations surrounding marriage and childbearing. Under President Xi Jinping, the state has responded by promoting more traditional family values and emphasizing the social importance of marriage and childbirth. The All China Women's Federation has been encouraged to help foster a new culture of marriage and childbearing, while media regulators have discouraged certain non-traditional expressions of masculinity on television. Within this broader biopolitical context, feminist ideas that promote childlessness, singlehood, or independent female lifestyles are often portrayed in official and popular discourse as forms of extreme feminism that challenge social stability and demographic goals. As a result, such perspectives have increasingly faced scrutiny and suppression within China's regulatory and security framework. Next slide, please. Yeah. So now I come to the main portion of the paper, that is the emergence of post-censorship feminism. Faced with the shrinking space for public activism, Chinese feminism has increasingly shifted from collective protest to a decentralized politics of everyday life. Rather than relying on large-scale demonstrations or highly visible social media campaigns, many Chinese women now engage in what can be described as everyday feminism, a form of activism that politicizes personal choices, household dynamics, and everyday negotiations within this framework. Decisions related to career development, financial autonomy, and the rejection of conventional romantic relationships are understood not merely as individual preferences, but as deliberate challenges to the patriarchal norms and expectations. A key digital arena for these everyday negotiations is Xiaohongshu, lifestyle sharing platform with a predominantly female user base that has become an important space for everyday digital feminism. On the platform, women engage in micro-level discussions and meaning-making by sharing personal experiences of domestic labor, workplace discrimination, and broader social inequalities under themes such as women's growth. Since explicitly political language is often subject to censorship, these conversations are frequently framed through the language of self-care, personal development, and economic independence. Recent research also has identified a growing and increasingly sophisticated practice in which Chinese women use large language models To navigate these discussions in the face of online harassment, surveillance, and concerns about self-disclosure, many women turn to AI-powered private interfaces to reflect on, draft, and process their gendered experiences before sharing them publicly. By engaging with AI as a non-judgmental conversational partner, they are able to work through personal concerns and validate experiences of structural inequality while avoiding both external scrutiny and internal hesitation within a relatively secure digital environment. The restriction of feminist discourse has encouraged the emergence of digital sisterhood, decentralized, non-hierarchical online networks that provide emotional support, mutual aid, and relatively secure spaces for communication. Drawing on the interactive features of digital platforms, these communities reshape understandings of femininity through highly participatory, aesthetic, and supportive forms of engagement. Practices such as exchanging compliments, offering emotional affirmation, and sharing practical advice for navigating everyday challenges have become central to these spaces, creating a supportive online ecosystem that helps women cope with an often hostile social environment. These digital networks also function as affective communities, where shared experiences of pain, frustration, vulnerability, and resilience contribute to the formation of collective consciousness. This dynamic is particularly evident in anonymous groups, private WeChat circles, and temporary online forums where women discuss experiences of gender-based violence, domestic abuse, and reproductive pressure. By transforming personal experiences into a shared counter-narrative, these communities politicize issues that have traditionally been confined to the private sphere. In doing so, they foster psychological empowerment, solidarity, and a sense of belonging, enabling women to build resilient communities that transcend physical boundaries even within an authoritarian context. Next slide, please. One of the most important insights emerging from recent research on feminism in China is the understanding of self-censorship, not simply as a passive response to state control, but as an active and creative form of resistance. Operating within a highly monitored digital environment, Chinese feminists have become skilled wall dancers, developing sophisticated strategies to sustain conversations while avoiding the attention of automated censorship systems. To evade keyword filtering and automated surveillance, feminists continuously adapt their language through rewriting, code switching, and linguistic innovation. Banned political terms are often replaced with visual metaphors, emojis, homophonic wordplay, and rotated screenshots that can evade optical character recognition technology. They also strategically avoid explicitly political labels such as feminism, instead framing discussions through seemingly apolitical themes such as women's lifestyles, personal finance, self-development, or career plans. This form of tactical adaptation echoes Judith Butler's argument that censorship can be productive as well as restrictive. Rather than creating complete silence, state regulation compels the language of resistance to evolve in new and unexpected ways. Platform migration, the digital habitat of feminism in China, that is, as censorship and surveillance have intensified, activists have repeatedly relocated their discussion networks and forms of engagement across different online platforms. Over the past decade, the center of digital feminist activity has shifted through a series of platforms shaped by changing technological structures, varying levels of state oversight, and evolving user demographics. The trajectory of this migration reflects a strategic balancing act between maintaining public visibility and ensuring the safety of the community. As feminists move across platforms, they continuously negotiate the tension between reaching broader audiences and protecting their networks from surveillance, censorship, and political abuse. Feminists have learned to adapt to the unique architecture of different platforms in order to sustain their communities and circulate ideas. While Weibo continues to serve as a space for occasional high-profile disclosures that can briefly attract national attention before being censored, Douban has functioned as an intellectual incubator for discussion and reflection, Town Hall should provide a platform for sharing practical strategies of everyday resistance, while podcasts offer a more intimate and reflective space for emotional support, collective storytelling, and long-form conversation. Next slide, please. Perhaps the most radical expression of post-censorship feminism can be seen in the rise of the CNU movement on Toba, short for CNU. CNU emerged as a distinct online community in early 2021, influenced in part by the growing circulation of South Korea's radical 6B4C movement within Chinese digital space. Originating as a non-violent and uncooperative challenge to patriarchal social structures, the 6B4C movement promotes a complete personal, social, and economic rejection of institutions perceived as being dominated by male power. The movement is built around a highly structured framework that is divided into two sets of principles, 6B and 4C. The 6B, behavioral refusals, advocate rejecting heterosexual marriage, rejecting childbirth, avoiding romantic relationships with men, refusing sexual relations with men, rejecting beauty-driven consumerism, and promoting mutual support among singles. The 4T, mental and cultural refusals, encourage resistance to restrictive beauty standards, disengagement from otaku and fujoshi subcultures, rejection of idol and celebrity worship, and the abandonment of patriarchal religious traditions. Together, these principles seek to challenge gendered expectations not through public protest but through deliberate changes in everyday lifestyle, social relationships, and cultural practice. In the Chinese context, EU activists have adapted this transnational feminist vocabulary to local realities, developing a set of concepts that translate radical feminist ideas into concrete everyday practice. For example, the CUM refers to a critical rejection of romantic dating and sexual relationships with heteronormative patriarchal structures. Such relationships are viewed as key sites of female exploitation, unequal emotional labor, and gender dependency. MEI conceptualizes appearance-related practices, including makeup, long hair, high heels, and dieting, not as expressions of personal choice or empowerment, but as forms of unpaid labor performed to satisfy the heterosexual male gaze. Kanxiao offers a direct critique of traditional Confucian family structures. In practice, Kanxiao may involve distancing oneself from patriarchal or abusive family relationships, refusing gendered expectations of emotional labor toward parents, adopting to mother's surname, and prioritizing horizontal bonds of female friendship over hierarchical family obligations. Next slide, please. This non-cooperative lifestyle orientation has been accompanied by the rapid growth of a feminist podcast culture in China. Between 2019 and 21, the country experienced a significant podcasting boom, with the number of feminist-themed podcasts on major audio platforms increasing from 8 to 35 within just 2 years. By 2023, China's podcast audience had grown to more than 220 million listeners, with over 60% of users aged between 24 and 40. Most of these listeners were highly educated urban professionals living in first and second tier cities. The audio format offers several advantages that make it particularly valuable within China's tightly regulated digital environment. Unlike text-based content on platforms such as Weibo or WeChat, which can be rapidly screened through automated keyword filtering systems, audio content is more technically demanding to monitor and regulate at scale. Podcasting also remains a relatively niche medium compared to short video or microblogging platforms, attracting less intensive scrutiny from regulators. This relative elusiveness of audio has enabled podcasts to become intimate spaces for hosts, where hosts can discuss sensitive social issues with greater depth and candor. For many listeners, these programs provide a sense of parasocial companionship, emotional support, and community, helping them navigate the pressures of contemporary social life. To preserve this important space for discussion, Chinese podcasters have developed a range of strategies to navigate censorship. One common approach is oblique talking. which relies on literary metaphors, coded language, and indirect references to address sensitive topics. Another widely used tactic is the deliberate alternation of sensitive and non-sensitive content. In practice, discussions of labor rights, gender-based violence, or domestic inequality are often interspersed with lighter episodes on popular culture, food, entertainment, or everyday life. This blending of content helps reduce visibility while sustaining audience engagement. Several feminist podcasts have played, that is the evolution of feminist activism in contemporary China, from the highly visible public facing and legally driven mobilization of the Me Too movement to the decentralized everyday practices of post-censorship feminism, reflects a significant transformation in the ways social resistance operates under digital authoritarianism. This shift cannot be fully explained through conventional frameworks of social movements that measure success primarily through street protests, policy change, or large-scale public mobilization. Within the tightly regulated environment created by the state platform nexus, visibility often carries substantial risk. Rather than serving as a source of empowerment, hypervisibility can expose activists to censorship, surveillance, account suspension, and social exclusion. To navigate this environment, contemporary Chinese feminists have developed what recent scholarship describes as the form of spectral agency, the concept of living hosts. As digital living hosts, censored and marginalized feminists resist complete erasure by continuing to operate within the margins of online sphere. They strategically manage their visibility by limiting access to posts, maintaining private archives, avoiding searchable metadata, and relying on closed or semi-private communication networks. This spectral existence enables them to remain present without becoming easily identifiable targets. In doing so, they acquire a distinct critique and endure structures of domination while minimizing exposure to state and platform retaliation. Ultimately, post-censorship feminism functions as a decentralized, adaptive, and constantly evolving into intimate relationships, everyday choices, and supportive digital communities. Chinese women are gradually reshaping the conditions of daily life and survival through practices such as 6B40, the rejection of beauty servitude, challenges to traditional notions of filial piety, and creation of safe spaces within the podcasting landscape. They are constructing alternative ways of imagining and living gender relations. This form of quiet resistance does not primarily seek immediate confrontation with the state or rapid institutional reform. Instead, its focus lies in sustaining feminist consciousness, preserving collective memory, and fostering networks of support that can endure over time. In this sense, post-censorship feminism reveals how demands for gender equality can persist and evolve even under conditions of intense digital surveillance and ideological regulation. Its strength lies not in visibility alone, but in its capacity to adapt, survive, and continually generate new possibilities for resistance and social change. With that, I will end the presentation.
Okay, so notwithstanding the network glitches, I think it was a very interesting presentation. So Bitisha, before I go on to the Q&A, I'm very curious to understand two things. One, you have of course laid out a very comprehensive backdrop in many ways, consisting of all its challenges and complexities, and looked at the sociological manifestation of how women today are articulating their demands and their rights. But I just wanted to understand if any of this is being reflected in creative literature or creative art. That's one of my questions, because I feel that somewhere the women's issues have been raised consistently through literature through the 20th century and even in the last 2 decades of the 21st century, not necessarily very in the face manner, but very innovatively. So I would like to know that whether any of this are actually making its way into literature. And the other question that I have is, you've talked about the theoretical framework and you've talked about some of the Western thoughts on feminism. What I want to understand is how is the women studies scholars within China, are they talking about these manifestations and are they making an input into all these state of flux or transformation that we are studying from outside? And how have you drawn your materials from what kind of sources? So if you can quickly answer that, then we'll move on to Q&A.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So regarding the literature aspect of it, or visual arts, so I don't think there is any significant representation of the current trend of this online feminism being represented in the literature. But there are certain forms of online literature that is coming up, I think, but not very clear or not very such significant representations of this kind of activism. This is basically still in the state of activism, ma'am. I think that I would like to that's what I would like to believe. And the literature part, not it is similarly, ma'am, not being exactly like no literature. There are a lot of feminist literatures. They are writing some online literature. This thing is happening, but the portion that I talked about mainly, this is still, I think, limited to the activism part of it. I think that's what. And about that, the Chinese women scholars who are working like within China, ma'am, I think that there are research. There is research being carried out, and mostly the materials that I drew are from research papers only. There are research papers that are being published regarding this form of activism, and mostly there are articles and blogs and articles mostly. So that will be a quick. That's all I could answer in this very quickly.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we open it up for Q&A. Are there any questions in the chat box?
There aren't any questions right now in the chat box.
Okay, so I see many. There is a
We
long
have
comment
one.
something from Mahua. It's a long one. Could you, if you are there?
Yes, ma'am, should I read it?
Hello?
Am I audible?
Is that Mahua speaking?
No, ma'am, it's Kankana.
Okay. No, I'm saying that Mahua's comment in the chat box is very long. If she's still here in the audience, maybe she would like to concise it into a question herself.
Mohua, you have to unmute yourself and say.
Okay, as we wait for her, are there any other questions and comments from? I see a lot of PhD students from our center and from other institutions. Okay, Mohua, it seems, cannot unmute herself. Mallika, would you like to read out your question, or would you like to speak yourself? Or Kankana, do you want to read this out?
I can do that.
Yeah.
So Malika Vora has asked something on the chat box. Good afternoon. Thank you for an engaging presentation. My name is Malika Vora. I am a PhD scholar in the Department of East Asian Studies at the University of Delhi. I have two inquiries. First, prior to the emergence of decentralized forms of resistance, what were the dominant issues that shaped women's movement in China? And second, since you highlighted protests centered on everyday life and the personal sphere, have you explored the literature on how far Chinese feminism has engaged with the care economy, particularly the feminization of care work?
Okay, so would you like to take that now, Vidisha?
Yes, ma'am, sure. I think I just missed the last part. It mentions that regarding that care work. Mm.
Care economy. But maybe first talk about the first question. Prior to the emergence of decentralized forms of resistance, what were the dominant issues that shaped the women's movement in China?
Basically, if we talk about activism, it started, as I mentioned in the paper as well, it started from 2000, basically started from 2015, that the Feminist Five, arrest of the Feminist Five, and then it went on to Me Too movement and the rest of that Me Too movement was also a very like, it was out and out, it was very public. So mainly the activism part of it started post 2012, I would say, with and the major very significant movement was that of the Feminist Five, the arrest of the Feminist Five. And regarding the care economy, I'm actually not aware of that part of it much, but I will definitely look into it. That's why I would refrain from answering anything about that, because I'm not even clear and even not sure about that part of it.
Okay, Usha Chandran has a comment. So, Usha, would you like to come in now? Can you unmute yourself, Usha?
Yes. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I obviously have a lot of things to say, but I will just try to uh, bring down just a few highlights and a few questions that Bidisha can look at. Perhaps is that what is the basic issue here? Why the CPC, which was supporting women's liberation movement right from the 1950s, is so much against feminist activism? Or cyber feminism. So what is their problem with feminism? It's with the word itself. It's that's politically sensitive, because of and the answer lies also in the earlier question, that what was the women's liberation movement before that. So I think there lies the answer. It's not so you can't skip the whole period from 50s and straight away come to the current issue without understanding what is the CPC's problem with feminism per se, and cyber feminism, and now cyber activism. Like they have any government will have a problem with activism. And also, what is ACWF's view on cyber feminism? These are the, I mean, major comment that I have that one can look into. But separately, I want to really congratulate, because it is quite comprehensive and a very deeply studied work that you've done here. And I'm personally very happy, because it's a very marginalized field, and someone working on feminism in China. It's also you have brought out very latest and the current issue that plagues this issue. I also want to point out that how the decentralization of feminist activism has also led to this closed door, as you were talking about. So Xiaohongshu and other of these platforms will have lot of publicity on some discussion which will be vaguely named as commemorating some scholar, or maybe some very womanly type of typical issues, like okay, about children or something which will actually just will be seen as something which is which is for the family, or but actually the real discussion going on is based on women's rights and movement and feminist concerns. So that's also another very interesting point that you have raised. So thank you so much.
So thanks, Usha. Vidisha, would you like to respond to that? You have two more comments come questions in the chat box. Before we do that, would you like to please respond to Usha?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much, Isha ma'am, for the comments. And I will definitely look more into the points that you raised. For the first, that as ma'am said, that why the Communist Party has a problem with the word feminism. Mostly, as ma'am also answered it also, that the activism part of it basically that is creating a problem, or maybe the scope of feminism as a concept being able to have the capacity to mobilize the people. I think that is also one reason. And yeah, ACWF's take on the matter very like separately. I haven't gone through the ACWF's take on this current trend of feminist activism that is happening online, but some certain for example, the leftover women concept, or some like how to say to like reiterating the party's idea of feminism, or the party's idea of how like, for example, paying more attention to the gender roles or the family values that is being given so much importance to right now. So that in those things, in propagating those things, ACWF does have a role to play currently. But if take on it, I will definitely look into it, ma'am, separately as well.
Okay, Professor Partha Mukhopadhyay has a comment, but before that, Mahua has tried to make her question more concise. So let me read that out. Does Me Too, which survives only by hiding names through homophony, still do the political work of Me Too, which depends on naming? And the second part of the question is, or does China's control over language turn it into something else, that is visibility without accountability? Vidisha.
Yes, ma'am. To answer that, I think, in fact, I even mentioned a few cases of Me Too in my paper also, that there have been a few actions, a few actions taken on some cases, mainly the case that I talked about in the beginning. But yeah, there are other cases which very evidently got like sidelined, and it did not do the cause that it was set out to do. It is mostly what I would like to what like my perception of it is mostly giving it the visibility that is much required, but the accountability part of it is still not up to the mark.
Okay, now Professor Partha Mukhopadhyay wants to, I think, ask himself. Can you unmute Partho? Somebody, can you unmute him?
Dr. Partha Mukhopadhyay, yes.
Let me try. Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Vidisha. I'm not sure whether you addressed this because I joined the talk a little late. But from what I understand, that now is a large the share of women in China who are not getting married is therefore pretty high and rising. And I'm just wondering how this is, whether or not this is at all linked to the phenomena that you are studying, and in particular how there may also be some linkage to the laws of property in China, and whether you have looked at that. For example, one of the things that Usha pointed out is why is the party getting so worried about this? And I'm just wondering whether the extent to which these kinds of phenomena are leading to the fall in fertility rates in China, and this is not just China, but also Korea, Japan, etc. And that might be a reason of concern because we know that the Chinese Communist Party is now trying to unwind the effects of its one-child policy. So, do you see any relationship between these two phenomena that we are looking at and the reaction of the party going forward, or are we talking about completely? Thank you.
Thanks, Barto. Thanks, Barto. Vidisha, would you respond to that?
Yes, ma'am, definitely. Just to be sure, what sir is trying to say is that if the inhibition of being married and having children is somewhat related to the marriage law and that aspect of it, right? If I'm not wrong, is that the question, sir?
I mean, there is marriage law. There's also laws on property. For example, one of the reasons I understand that marriage is an issue in China is because the uh, amount of control a woman has over property changes quite a bit when you get married.
Yes.
But
Yes, sir.
that is, but I mean, there are also other reasons why apparently women are not getting married because they're often much more educated, structured. So I'm just trying to see whether the phenomena of um, a smaller share of women choosing to get married and the kind of phenomena that you are studying, do you see any linkage between them? And is the Chinese Communist Party sort of worried that perhaps there is a feedback loop in the kind of feminism that you're looking at and leads to sort of a phenomena where you are reinforcing the tendency not to get married, which then reinforces the tendency not to have children, and then you sort of end up with the kind of problems that the Communist Party is trying to avoid. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just speculating completely at this point.
Thank you, Barto. Vidisha?
Yes, ma'am. To answer that, yes, it definitely is somewhat connected to the concept of, for example, the in China, like before marriage, the men are expected to buy a house or a property of their own. So that is one reason that the women are a bit like there is inhibition regarding this property aspect of it. Like who is going to have the ownership? So these are one of the things, and then the responsibilities of a marriage. So since I also mentioned in the paper, for example, that they are like there are more and more women working in urban China. So this shared responsibility of marriage and this family values and these concepts are also one of the major reasons that there is this inhibition regarding marriage and childbearing and uh, yeah, so that and CCP's take on it basically, it is definitely a matter of concern because there is this declining birth rate that we all know, this problem of aging population and declining birth rate. So this mentality or this sudden this unwillingness to get married and childbearing is definitely a matter of concern for the party as well, for the longer period.
Okay, we have a raised hand from Professor Alka Acharya. Alka, would you like to unmute yourself, ask the question?
Yeah, thank you. Just a very basic information kind of a question. In what manner is feminism taught in China's universities? Are they, I mean, what are the kind of courses that are offered on this? Because obviously, if it's through the university system, it would have a certain measure of legitimacy and approval. And so, what are the kind of frameworks that are employed? How is feminism taught in China's universities and colleges?
Yes, Vidisha, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, that question actually, I don't have a very clear understanding of the framework of like education of feminism in China right now. And I will definitely look into that part of it, ma'am. Actually, I don't have a very like clear understanding of that part actually.
Okay. So are there other questions?
There aren't any questions in the chat box.
Any more raised hands? Okay. So, unless somebody else has any more comments, we would. Usha had some comment in the chat box. Basically, feminism as a theory is seen as a Western term and not considered contextual for China. So, Vidisha, do you have any concluding remarks to make? Otherwise,
Just a quick kind of intervention here. I noticed Usha has a certain response, and if she may be allowed, I would really like some clarification on the question I asked. I think Usha's.
sure. Usha? Usha, are you there?
Yeah, I was not able to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, quickly, I will just, because it was a question that I could not keep quiet on. So feminism as a theory is taught as a Western theory. And historically, the way the Western, in the Western context, how the feminist theory came into being. So it is taught in that way. When it comes to the Chinese context, only women's liberation movement is taught. And therefore, there is no mingling or there is no merging of feminism and women's liberation movement. But in the curriculum, they are taught differently. However, as Bidisha also pointed out, in the online platform, or when with the new generation, post perhaps 2005 or post 2005, it was during that time that Chinese people or the youngsters started using feminism for their own context. And that is why that question about scholars in China, what are they talking about? They don't talk about feminism in the Chinese context. And therefore, they still look at it as a Western concept, which is not, suitable for the Chinese reality. And therefore, these disintegration helps because then they can talk about issues related to women by not mentioning the word which is not accepted as their own issue. It is seen as a Western problem, and therefore the curriculum also included as two separate issues wherever the women's studies is taught. That is the way. That's how I understand. Thank you.
Thanks. That was, in fact, that was the sense I got, that it's taught almost as something external to China's reality, just purely theoretically. So thanks a lot.
So Partho has posted a link which shows an example of an approved course Okay, so, but is there any other question? Any other comments? If not,
I mean,
yeah,
my understanding, I mean, Ushka can sort of obviously is a bit much better versed in this than I am, but I see a fair amount of writing on this from Chinese universities, engaging with, now, obviously, publishing in foreign journals may be different from publishing in Chinese journals, and there has historically been this separation and dichotomy that is maintained. So I don't know whether they actually teach that stuff, but they certainly do research and engage with quote unquote Western feminism, so to speak, uh, among scholars of sociology and even economics and others in China. So uh, I'm still trying to get a handle on this whole separation of feminism as Western story.
okay. So Partho
Yeah,
and
the course
others, I think.
no, the course he's uploaded has no mention of the word feminism. I quickly looked at it. So basically,
Right.
that upholds what Usha was saying. Oh, sorry to interrupt, Bree. Thank you.
No interruption, but I think we have given Vidisha a lot of suggestions, ideas, questions, and a lot of avenues to be explored. Isn't that so, Vidisha?
Yes, ma'am, definitely. I was coming to that. I did like come to know that I do need to look into some more interesting avenues of it, like ma'am Usha ma'am also mentioned and Alka ma'am also mentioned, because the framework of the how feminism is being taught in China, this is completely like I was not aware of it much before this, and thank you so much, Usha ma'am as well for helping me out and answering that question for the audience. So yeah, I did get a lot of suggestions, ma'am,
Food
and
for thought.
that's
Yeah.
actually very yes, ma'am. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So, I think we need to also wrap up while Mahua Chakravarti is posted to more questions. But I think these are things that we have already told Bidisha to look at. For instance, can Chinese and Indian feminism be understood through the same theoretical framework? So this will be an extension of what we were talking about just now as to what theoretical framework can we use to also address this complete disjunction on the ground and in the realms of academia. I think with that, shall we wrap up? Alka, what do you say? Shall we wrap up?
Yeah, you're the boss.
Okay, so I hand over to, and thanks Vidisha for a very, very exciting, we will, all of us are left with a lot more questions to think about. So with that, I'll hand over to Kankana.
Yes, Professor, I seek your permission to formally bring an end to today's session.
Yes,
Should I go
please.
ahead? Yes. Okay.
Yes, please.
With this, we come to the end of today's seminar. We thank Ms. Vidisha Seth and Professor Sabri Mitra for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their valuable time. We also thank the audience for joining us today. The video of today's seminar shall be available on the ICS YouTube channel. We extend a warm invitation to all for the upcoming Wednesday seminar. Details about the upcoming events can be found on the ICS website, and you may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you all.